Good morning, everyone. I would request you all to please be seated for the next session. Um, we're already running behind schedule, so I would request everyone to please be seated so that we can start with our upcoming first session for the day. Okay. Thank you so much for your attention. I would request everyone to put your phones kindly on silent and restrict the movement so that we can have a fruitful and a very interesting session moving forward. This session is all about from SDA to space security, protection, resilience, and response. As space becomes increasingly congested and contested, space domain awareness is critical for ensuring space sustainability, protecting critical assets, and enhancing operational resilience. This session will explore SDA's role in threat detection, collision avoidance, asset protection, and safeguarding national interests, while examining counterspace threats and the countermeasures required to ensure secure and resilient space operations. Thank you so much. And now I would like to welcome our esteemed moderator and the panelists over here. Let's all welcome our chair and moderator, Lieutenant General PGS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Deputy Chief IDS, and Senior Advisors to Senior Dev. Sir, we welcome you. Now we'll have our list of speakers, esteemed speakers. We start with the no particular order, Brigadier DS Bajaj, Commandant VAR DEC. Can we have you over here, sir? Dr. Ranjana Kaul, Partner Dua Associates. Can we also have you? Mr. Philippe, Divo, Director of Business Development Impulse Space. Thank you so much, sir. We welcome you. Can we have a round of applause? Mr. Ashok Saxena, Chief Executive Officer and Founder, Space TS. Mr. Pranav Satyanath, Senior Manager for Government Relations, Catalyx Space. Mr. Abhimanyu Singh, co-founder and CEO, Nash Shield. Can we all have you here? Thank you so much. No, it's... Ma'am, I think... No, chair is there. Sir, I'll hand over the dais to you from now on, and you can take it forward. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I realize that we have more number of speakers and less number of people who are listening, I think what we will do is we will decide amongst ourselves what is the future of the SDA. And you should read the report later on. And then later on, you will realize that this was the most important part of the India Space Congress 2026. Having said that, let me start with a few things. When there is a question of national security, it is linked to intelligence and operations. And you cannot conduct operation such as the war if you're not prepared for it, and you can only be prepared to fight a war if you have the necessary intelligence, which is awareness. And if you're unaware, or you choose to be unaware, you will do that because you, A, don't have the national will, or you don't have the means, or you don't have the intent, or there is no felt need for yourself to protect your country. But if you have all these four things that I'm talking about, then it is important for all of us in the space sector to understand that if you are going to be a space-faring nation, you better understand the security dimensions of the space. Here, when I use the word security, it is obviously different from safety. You can be safe, but you still can't be secure. Because even when you feel that you are safe, there could be something which is happening that you are not aware of and a threat is building up, or your capability is being questioned, your capability is being threatened, or your capability is being degraded constantly, yet you are feeling that you are you are safe. So on the panel, we have a very distinguished speakers. I have Dr. Ranjana Kaul, and she, day before yesterday, spoke about the space situational awareness and the rules, regulations, understanding, all that goes along with it. So I will therefore not ask her to start, because technically this is how it should be happening. But I will ask my industry partners to talk about that. If you already understand the space domain awareness, what does the industry provide for in making sure that you are giving the element of decision superiority? And if the decision superiority is not there, then really speaking, there's somebody else who is having a decision edge. And anybody who has the decision edge is certainly, even before you announce the result, or the result is in front of you. So let me start with Mr. So what I'll do is, first we will only allow you to speak for about 1 or 2 minutes each, okay? How does industry look at this domain of space domain awareness? Just 2 minutes, and then we will start a discussion. We'll start with Mr. Saxena.
Good morning and Jai Hind. I am honored to be invited by SIA on such a distinguished panel, And I would like to give special thanks to my guiding stars in my new space journey, and that is General Pannu and Dr. Ranjana. Yes, Ranjana. So, I mean, they have been really guiding me and helped me understand the ecosystem here, Now, since I have 2 minutes, I would like to say that we are really focusing and our bread and butter on space domain awareness, and we are applying AI to all parts of it, whether it is space, upstream, midstream, or downstream. But our main focus is, in fact, on space domain awareness, space-based. That means we are looking at identifying and characterizing satellites from space, not on ground. And the other thing is that at a conceptual stage, we are working also on defensive and offensive space warfare, And I know that space warfare is a no-no unless you cannot be attributed. So our concepts and designs are based on the fact that you can conduct offensive missions as long as you cannot, so nobody can point that you're doing it,
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm very impressed with your offensive and defensive operations and the elements which you have in place for both. And I think this is going to make our discussion very, very interesting. Abhimanyu, why do you want to be aware of the space? And after that, what do you think you will do with the awareness that what you get? In 2 minutes, if you can just describe how do you look at it.
Thanks firstly for the invite on this panel. Quickly, in 2 minutes, I would say
Write first and act first, and that's exactly what we are helping with.
Oh, thank you, Gene. So, OODA superiority, which gives you decision superiority. Pranav, just by putting more satellites, are you better off or are you worse off? Because just by putting more satellites, you're also as vulnerable. If you didn't have any, then in any case, you are under no threat. So do you think it's a right thing not to have a satellite, but depend on somebody else's satellite? Because you would get the services, but you will not face the music as far as the threat is concerned. Or does space domain awareness spread beyond the orbit and come down to the infrastructure on ground? So can you just correlate the space in space and space other than in the orbital sense of the infrastructure.
Thank you very much, General Pannu. It's really an honor to be on this SDA panel, especially since I believe I'm one of the youngest on the panel. Space domain awareness today is unlike what we had in the last century, between 1957 and 2000, or even the last decade, because today we have cyber and electronic warfare that has come into the picture, and it's no longer about tracking the physical presence of resident space objects. In that regard, even if you're dependent on somebody else's satellite, the ground stations are extremely vulnerable. Electromagnetic interference of your downlink is extremely vulnerable. You can always get jammed. And of course, your uplink command sometimes may not work because somebody may have hacked your satellite, and it may function in anomalous ways. These are new elements to space domain awareness that we have not seen before. So having one's own satellite network and having one's own sovereign assets will help you recover and become more resilient rather than depend on somebody else.
Okay, so when again talking about space domain awareness, you're actually looking at the other orbital assets which could be adversarial. In behavior, you are trying to figure out whether they are trying to do something against your national interest, against your physical security, or are they're doing something against the ground infrastructure. Technology-wise, I think it is a big challenge to look at a satellite and tell and measure the kind of threat that it is emanating. So if you have to look at the threat from the other orbital assets of any other country, and also you have to look at your own orbital assets from a prism of how secure they are, and vis-a-vis what the others are doing to your own assets, I think it requires a huge amount of ecosystem understanding and interfaces that you are completely aware of what is happening, what are the threats which are coming up, and you have to decide after you have discovered a threat. After the space domain aware, now that you're aware of it, what do you do with this awareness? But I will stop here. What do you do after the awareness? I'm going to talk about in the second round. But Ranjana, please tell me, space situational awareness, you can have an accident. But space domain awareness, you are actually protecting your assets from a deliberate incident which can be created against your assets. Or are you looking at space situational awareness which has an overlap with space domain awareness, or there is no overlap and these are absolute different domains? And I think a lot of people need to be told what is different and what is similar and what is in the shades of gray.
So thank you, General Sir. You started off saying that safety and security are two different aspects. They're two different aspects of the very same thing, which is that you're operating your satellites in outer space, you have your sovereign territories, you have your sovereign maritime zone, you have your sovereign airspace. And everything and anything is related to your sovereign assets also in outer space. So safety and security, just like you and me, we go get an insurance because life insurance, what would happen? And you go and get a fire insurance. Just a security, if there's a short circuit and something goes wrong with it. And you have the police, whom you'll call. So similarly, when you're operating satellites in space, you want to assure the physical safety of those satellites. You want to be driving on the right side of the road, and you do not want to be going on a one-way street, because that's for sure a collision. How do we find that out in space? And of course, it is all done. A term that we use, space situational awareness, relates to the safety. And what do we do? We have technological capacities that allow the satellites to be tracked, that look at the debris, And if you are the one taking those services, they are going to, relative to your satellite, tell you exactly where it is, give you alerts, and then give you the probability of conjunction probability. And then it is up to you whether you wish to act upon that advice that is being given by your service provider. So you may undertake a collision avoidance maneuver, or then again choose not to. When you undertake a collision avoidance maneuver, what does it mean? It means you maneuver your satellite out of harm's way of that piece of debris which is coming along its predictable path towards you. Each time you do that, there is fuel that is used up. And the more often you do that, the more often you use that finite amount of fuel, and the operational life gets. The congestion is a problem in that context. Now, when you're talking of space domain awareness, then SSA and STM, Space Traffic Management, is a subset, because you want to assure the safety and the security. Now, SSA therefore deals with the unintentional threat of man-made orbital debris and active satellites. Now, active satellites is a whole different situation. Why? Because that active satellite, on a good day, you contact the satellite operator on the opposite side and say, well, this is what is happening. How shall we coordinate? Will you do the cam, or will I do the cam? And then again, it may be a hostile. That hostile part is what becomes difficult. Space domain awareness is well beyond that. It is not just SSA, it is also having weather satellites network, because you want to see if there's a solar storm coming, you want to see whether your environment in space is degrading, whether your satellite needs replacement, and you want missile tracking, you want early warning system, that's a whole different range of satellite system. You're looking at the policies of those that you believe may be inimical to your interest. You're looking at what is the background of those people. You're trying to understand the behavior and the intent. So it is a huge space domain awareness is a very big concept that you're talking about. So I'll stop here because that's all you've asked me, but I could tell you some more if you like.
I think we need to extend the session to maybe a couple of more hours. The reason is that the audience sitting here probably would want to know something, and if they don't want to know, then I'd like to know on their behalf. What is, whose subset? Is SSA a subset of SDA, or is SDA a subset of SSA?
SSA is subset of SDA.
So SDA is bigger,
Of course, it's a
and
much larger.
SSA is a subset which is smaller. So we are settled on one part. Second thing is, when you are in an orbit, you are saying the behavior of another terrestrial object, non-terrestrial object, is being looked at. What kind of a behavior is it? Red eyes, teeth, a dagger in hand, somebody abusing, somebody raising a hand. What do you check in the behavior? If I have to feed my satellite to say, hey, listen, you are a SDA satellite, I want you to have a checklist of these 20, 30, 40, 100 things, and if any of this happens, please send me a buzzer to say, hey, listen, that fellow is shouting at me, abusing me, next day maybe he's going to kill me. Or is it a maneuver which is deliberately somebody heading towards you? How do you decide whether this behavior is a behavior which is accidental, or this behavior is intentional? If this behavior is not handled at some point, it is going to be harmful to A, B, C type of space asset of yours. So how do you program this? What kind of a threat?
Well, how do you program it? I'll leave it to those that know technology.
That's why the audience.
But
That is why on their behalf I'm asking
the
a question.
objective is that you need to have your capability which is able to understand the kind of maneuvers. Is this satellite hovering too close to you? Is it hovering over your national territories? What is it doing exactly in terms of maneuvering? That's the one part, especially when you're talking about, and you are only talking about operational satellites. Debris doesn't do that. It has no agency of its own at all. And so it's going to come, and you have to do what you have to do to protect yourself. I mean, to keep yourself safe. And so that is why we use the terms behavioral pattern and intent. And the way in which it is done is first and foremost this, that every man-made object in outer space has got a international designator. The one register that is most popularly used is the NORAD satellite catalog. Our NGPs, the guidelines that have been issued by InSpace, this is what it requires. That you are my regulator, you authorize me to go and buy a commercial launch from him, who's a commercial launch service provider. He provides it. But before I do that, I am required to apply to the SATCAT, to NORAD, to say that this is the intention, this is my satellite, this is where I want to place it, I need an ID. So they give you a temporary ID. You then launch it and it's established, and our requirement under our NGP is that within a month of its being stabilized, you must provide that ID to InSpace. But before you do that, you have informed NORAD that, okay, fine, all good to go, I'm established. They then give you a permanent ID. It's a 9 alpha-digit numeral. That ID is then used for tracking that satellite by your regulator, because continuing supervision is one part of Article 6. So that is to say where you are. Why? Because the state has to assure that its satellites are moving in conformity or behaving themselves in conformity with the space treaty. So that's one part. The other part is this behavior and intent, which you need to find out. And so those satellites are tracking differently, looking at what, and you conjunct all this information and all this data together to make your assessment. And then you're making an assessment about a particular country that may be very friendly with you, and those that may not really like you much.
Thank you. Very clear. I'm looking at Mr. Ashok Saxena. You said you are into offensive and defensive satellite operations, right? So if I have asked a question, how would your offensive satellites behave, so that we can understand that your offensive satellites behave in a manner so we can say that you are threatening our assets? Or are you not behaving differently? It becomes very difficult for SDA to say whether you are a threat or not a threat. Don't you have to look innocent, not to be caught? Or are you going to absolutely play naughty in the orbit so that you're caught by the SDA to say, hey, listen, this fellow is not okay, I must do something about it? So in offensive, defensive, I think you are the best person to say the behavior pattern, how do you look at it?
In terms of offensive systems that we are looking at, I think the one key word is random. We are doing things randomly, so nobody can really catch up with us.
So space domain awareness is more of a talk. It is not that because randomly you're doing it, then how do you do all that, NORAD equivalent of information over a period of time? You're monitoring over a period of time, you're getting the data, and then say, okay, these are the satellites which are likely to misbehave. And therefore I must keep a track and do something about defending or providing security to it. So I don't think so then the SDA is possible. If you're going to have such smart satellites moving around, which are offensive satellites, which can't be caught.
Well, SDA is a big challenge, and I happen to agree totally with Dr. Ranjana's definition of SSA and SDA. In some countries, they say that SSA and SDA is the same, except that SDA is applied to military applications. But like I said, I agree with Dr. Ranjana's definition that SSA has to do more with the location or the center of mass of these satellites. And SDA has to do more with a three-dimensional understanding and actually a multi-dimensional understanding of what these satellites are doing. And so we are using actually for space domain awareness. We have built a ground system, we've designed a satellite, and we are starting to build one in September. And we are also looking at payloads that will go on the satellite that will be developed with the transfer of technology, so we will have Indian content on the payload, the satellite, and the ground system. It's the whole system. And there are 5, I would introduce the term, counterspace technologies, and which is by which people can take control of space. They can do whatever they want and prevent other people from actually doing what they want, And there are 5 technologies. One is direct ascent hits, is high energy space-based or ground-based. There is co-orbital systems. There is cyber security, and there is RF jamming, and in general, electronic warfare. So the first part, I think that people have agreed that it's bad manners to destroy satellites, because there have been 5 hits which generated 7,000 pieces of debris, and there are 3,000 that still remain. The second part is related to high energy systems, which we are not doing. But the other 3, we have done a significant amount of work, so we believe we can address or at least identify significant things in space domain awareness. And one of the ways of doing it is co-orbital systems. So one can actually develop a satellite which will defend other satellites, So that is the defensive warfare part of it.
So you're talking about bodyguard satellites, and bodyguard satellites will take the load of the naughty satellites which are floating around. But I think I have a lot of curious members sitting here, just looking at us. Maybe they want to ask a few questions because I'm running short of time. Also, how do you ever make an assessment on if you're going to be cyber attacked? If you're going to be cyber attacked, then you might as well have a cyber shield permanently, so that you're never cyber attacked. Yes. So you don't have to really change a maneuver, do anything special now that the cyber attack has happened, and then you say, oh, now that I'm falling sick, now start giving medicine and antidote to it and to recover. And should that happen, then obviously you got to have something through which a software-defined satellite possibly, you can throw patches to repair it. Well, we can continue to discuss this. As I said, the time is so short. I will ask anybody here if you have a question, but please have a question and make it short because the time is not enough. Yep, okay. Just Dr. Kaul will say that.
So up until now, I've only been talking about the physical identification. But active satellites also emit frequencies. And those that are engaged both in SSA or SDA, those satellites, also identify through those frequencies. Now the thing is, International Telecommunication Union does not disclose at all the frequencies that are being used by non-military or military. So this means that your satellites must already have capabilities to sense those frequencies, then to identify relative to that SATCAT number, then identify what type of frequency, which band, and whether it is typically being reserved by that country for strategic use or for standard use. And in this way, they build their own catalogs to be able to, you cannot always forever be dependent on somebody else. And for most part, all countries have their own SDA, STM system that I'm aware of.
Okay, even I'm very curious. I have a lot of questions, but I think I'll give the floor a chance to ask questions.
General Pannu, I wanted to ask you, for an inaugural session, you had talked of the PSLV, and you talked of the cyber and the space domain. So there's a question to the panel. Let's talk about practical reality. Would there be a chance of the PSLV downing, when the 8 satellites went down, a cyber attack would have done it? Is there a possibility?
Yeah, okay. So we'll take that question. General Dushyant?
Yeah, I've got a very short question. While we are, discussing these issues about how to counter the space-based assets for warfighting, the enemy is also doing the same. So there is a chance that the space-based assets may be denied. So my question is, in that eventuality, how are we going to negotiate? This is directed straight at you, because you are an operational commander. How are we going to actually fight through denied environment?
Okay, so the first is possible cyber attack for a launch, and this is a denied environment, and how do you resurrect? Any other question? Yeah, okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Mr. Ashok mentioned that offensive space capabilities are random. So one challenge in space conflicts is distinguish between a malfunction or a collision or a hostile act. So how developed are current SDA systems in providing attribution to support military decision making?
How good are
SDA systems
SDA systems working today in India? Right?
For attribution.
And how do you attribute that? Right? I think attribution, Dr. Ranjana Kaul spoke about, marking a threat and registering the threat and looking at the threat constantly. So you're keeping that under surveillance. But the two questions here are, as far as these two PSLVs are concerned, I think internally ISRO has ordered an inquiry. I would suspect that it could be this or that, but it is certainly possible. I'm not saying it was the fact. It is certainly possible for a cyber attack to have altered with the systems within the command and control TTC element of any. It's possible. So therefore, right from the stage of designing to transporting and to coupling the satellite and launching the whole thing, I think constant monitoring has to be there. If there is any backdoor entry, which anything would actually interfere in the system, or there is a bug, even during manufacturing, the bugs can come. And you have to constantly keep debugging to a point of zero defect. But I suppose, now this is a speculative answer, that the legacy systems which were successful earlier are the ones which say, no, keep reinforcing the same legacy system because it never happened before, so how will I? This cyber domain is a new domain added to it. So if the new domain is added to it, the legacy systems will have to go back to the drawing board stage. I think maybe that is happening or not happening. So there could be a possible gap, but this is a speculative answer because I'm not privy to the internal inquiry. As far as the denied environment is concerned, if the denial is happened by the service provider of whose service you are taking, you can do nothing about it. You are a customer and somebody has just switched off the system. But if your own system is under denial, then you've got to have resilience and you've got to have redundancies built into it. If you're not doing that, then you can do nothing about it. So you can continue to have different frequencies. You have to do maybe inter-satellite linking, or you have a constellation where some amount of it will be resurrected, and that is where I was talking about. You go in for software-defined satellites. If something has happened to the satellite, then you can still continue to try to restore the situation through optical links. Maybe RF may not be possible, but I'm not a man of technology. So we have the industry who possibly will tell how to resurrect a denied satellite.
Yeah, so I would like to add something that would address both questions of the gentleman here, but also something I wanted to add about the difference between space situational awareness and space domain awareness. I think that there is a line to be drawn between what you can do in a passive way, so listening, observing from the ground, knowing who is where, and having pattern identification to see who has a suspicious behavior eventually. But at some point, you need to be able to go to proximity of the incoming, suspicious threat. And that participates to the denial strategy as well, because if the adversary knows that you can get closer and see what is going on, so you can name and shame to start with, so there would be no secret operations in space, if I dare saying so. But also, You may have several layers of defense, maybe different types of spacecraft, some for scouting, quickly know what is going on, but as I said before, know first, act first. And then the active part could be another spacecraft, maybe with some sort of effector to counter. So I see it as a multiple stage strategy, maybe multiple spacecraft, multiple capabilities, up to, and hope it never has to happen, but all the way to the point where you need to take a physical action against the threat.
Thank you very much. Actually, we are running very short of time, but you can ask a question, but I hope it is just short so that we can give you a short answer.
You mentioned about sovereignty issues and something about airspace and outer space. So how do you differentiate? Where does airspace end and where does outer space begin? And how do you differentiate between the two when you're talking about specifically for space situational awareness and space domain awareness?
Look, when you're talking of space situational and space domain, it is all atmosphere and then it is outer space. You don't have to distinguish any from any.
So that means to
so
say that
hear me
airspace
out.
you're not doing any awareness?
Hear me out. So what it is that there are a couple of reasons why you don't differentiate. There is a capacity that your satellite has which is able to sense to the extent that it's able to sense. Your airspace has its capacity to look upwards to see what's coming in. Now the fact of the matter is that there is no rule in international law that is telling you that the vertical extent of state sovereignty in airspace is so much. There is no rule. It's still undefined. What you do know from the Chicago Convention is that the state has exclusive sovereignty in airspace. Similarly, in outer space, it is prohibited to extend state sovereignty to outer space. But where does outer space start actually? There is no rule in international law that provides you with a specific altitude or indeed a definition. That question has been on the table of the legal subcommittee of the COPUS in 1959. Advanced nations do not want any definitive demarcation. And through the 60s, this whole idea of von Karman line turned up. And where did it come up from? There is this institute in Strasbourg, in France, which does aeronautical sports. And they now wanted to distinguish between aeronautical sports and astronautical activities. And so they wanted some way to say that, you know, up to so much will be aeronautical. They did a spot of research and discovered this scientist called Theodor von Karman, Austrian but a US national, who was apparently the first to measure the altitude of atmosphere. And he said, well, it's around 100 kilometers, so 100 kilometers. That is the unofficial boundary which is accepted by all, including the United Nations. It makes the application of the treaties easier. So there is no distinguishing, it just depends on whether you're doing this up or that down.
We have a lady of Damocles hanging. She's denied us the involvement and we are timed out. All that I can say is that we just started. I think we will complete this during DEFSAT because this is the beginning of space war and understanding of it. I think this much is enough for today, and I think we will have a larger session, in fact, a couple of days in our next simulation exercise. And Abhimanyu, we will hear you more in that. Thank you very much. I can, at the moment, just thank the panelists and ask them to continue with us during DEFSAT. Thank you very much and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, our esteemed panelists and the moderator. And I would just request a small picture and I would let you guys go for the next session. We will just start the next session in a couple of minutes.